still joining,
Yeah.
but I think that might be like they have to click something. So
Yeah, I think that might be on them. Hello everyone, and welcome to our first of many evening education connections, is what we're calling them right now. But if someone has a witty name, we'll take it. We're really excited to be restarting these this year, and we are super excited to have Kerri and Brian Hanlon with us tonight, who are huge friends and advocates for HMS and work with our whole community, our students, our staff, and our families. So I want to just turn it right over to you all.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us, and really happy to be with all of you. If you have your camera on, yay, and if you choose to just have your name up there, that's fine as well. I see some familiar faces and names, so we're really happy to be here with you. Do you want to say hello?
Hello. I'm really enjoying being back in the school and working with the students and seeing the staff. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Good for the heart.
Yeah. So we have, just sort of touching on what our involvement has been at HMS over, last year and a half or so. So when COVID hit, we did wind up doing virtual classes with staff, which was just such a blessing to be able, for me, to be able to come together with staff once a week and just do, a little bit of movement, a little bit of breath work to really help the staff really get centered and grounded. And there's been so much that happens with our nervous systems during this time. So to get a little bit more regulated was really great. And then this year, we've been really excited to be back with students. And so we're going in on Tuesdays, working with 2 different classrooms, a classroom and an enrichment program. And so that's been really great. I'm really happy to be with you tonight because we often talk about, it takes everyone, right? It takes the staff and the teachers, and it takes the students, and it takes the caregivers to really help the students succeed in any school setting. And yet I think at HMS, it's even more so. And for those of you who may not know us, so I'm Kerri Hanlon.
Brian Hanlon.
And our son, Sean, attended HMS for many years, and he adored the school. He had great relationships, great friendships there, great relationships with all the teachers and staff. And he unfortunately passed away in 2017. But our connection with this community is still something that's really important to us. So we're happy to I kind of view it as like honoring his legacy in bringing this program forward. We're actually Yoga Home closed our physical studio. We have a studio in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. We closed our studio at the start of COVID. We kind of closed it saying, well, we're going to close for 2 weeks and come in and do some intense cleaning, and then we'll be back. And then it was, oh no, we're just done. So we shifted everything to an online platform. We had been teaching online for a while, but everything shifted online. And now in these last few months, we are getting back out and being in spaces with people again. So, we're here in our home studio, which had been Sean's bedroom. And so, but, put a fresh coat of paint on the wall. And I kind of like that his energy is still in here. And I'll share with you before we kind of get going. This is one of the pieces of art that Sean did when he was at school. And this one was called Yoga, right? So he did, as you know, right, there are always like all of the paintings and sculptures and everything, there's always a theme with them. And I love this one. And there are so many just sort of interesting things kind of baked into it. So I keep this in here as well, just as a way of honoring Sean and bringing him into this space. So, yeah. So my hope for tonight was to, green is calming. I was hoping to just share with you a little bit about what we're doing with the students, in case you have a student who's taking some of the yoga with us while they're at school, but then to really give you opportunity to just get a little taste. And some of you may have a yoga meditation practice. You may have a a breathing practice and sort of calming breaths that you do, but we're just going to find a really gentle and easy practice tonight. Something that I'm hoping that you could just sort of tap into whenever you need it. Okay. So, but before I go forward, I just want to pause and see if you have any requests for our time together this evening, because it's really all about you. I'm always open. You can unmute yourself if that's available. My co-host can make that happen, or throw something in the chat.
We can keep an eye on the chat if that is easiest for you. Okay, great.
Great. Fantastic. Cool. So I'm actually going to ask Brian. Brian's just going to take a seat in a chair here, and I want to just show you a few things. If you're, some parents have expressed interest in having, can you bring that onto the chair onto the mat? A few things that you might do with your students. And the first thing that I want to say is that, our approach to yoga, it's different than you're coming in and stretching them, or you're coming in and doing this, right? And it's one of the things that I've always appreciated about the therapist, that it is not, I'm doing this to you, it's you are doing this and I'm here to support you, right? Which I think is a really important distinction. And so I want to just give you a sense of kind of what our approach is. I'm just going to take a few minutes and kind of go through, and I'll just talk you through what it might look like and how we help everybody come into this. I'm going to actually spotlight my video if I can. Yeah, cool. That way, if people are catching the recording, you'll be able to see a little bit more of us. So the first thing we do whenever we come in, there's always like some introductions and hellos and how are you? And I'm really mindful that when our students come into yoga, most times we're removing communication devices. Before we do that, we try to do a check-in to make sure, there's a lot of permission asking, there's a lot of consent. Can remove this so that we can come in and do some yoga together. And so the first thing we do is help ourselves get really grounded. And so it may look like this. So, engaging with our students and just saying, how are you? Waiting for response. And then having that invitation of, let's just take a few breaths together, right? And I will really work on being in space with the students, so that we can sort of start breathing together. And so let's just take a few deep breaths. I'm going to take a deep breath all the way in and let it go. Take a few of those. Take a deep breath all the way in and let it go. Take one more big breath in. We tend to make a lot of noises too as we do it, to just really opening up our energy center in the throat can be really helpful. And then most classes we'll talk about setting an intention. So giving you an opportunity to so is there something that's coming into your heart space? And is there something that you're calling in, or is there someone that you're thinking about that you want to send some extra love and attention to? And then we would take a breath into that and we would maybe om together. So the invitation is to join for an om. Some students do, some students don't, which is what happens in every yoga class, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But let's take an om together. And if you want to join us at home, you're very welcome to do that as well. You could bring your hand over your heart space, or just let yourself be present for a moment. The eyes could soften or close. And to just sort of bring us into this shared space together, while we are doing this in sort of a model of what we might do in school, let yourself just drop into a bit of a deeper presence here. And examining your reason for being here. If there's something that's speaking to your heart space, invite that in. And we'll open our time together with an om. There's no right or wrong way to om. It's a universal sound. So whatever noise you make is perfect. We'll take an inhale, then Om. Take a breath in. And then just pause. One of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves with this practice, and we remind the students of this all the time, is that ability to pause, right? Pause between breaths, pause between movements, pause between our activities, just to have that assessment of where you are. And then some specific things that we might do to help our students really get grounded. So we spend a lot of time getting anchored to the feet and the legs. And so allowing yourself, and some students, most of them come in with either shoes or doppos on. Sometimes we keep them on, sometimes we take them off. It depends on schedules, as you know, right? But we may just sort of take hands and just push a little bit of pressure down into the feet. And the whole time encouraging students to really feel what's happening, to get a little bit more sensation here. And then similarly, we could do a little bit of activation through the legs. So I might be asking students, if it's available, to really bring their hands onto their thighs. So Brian already has his hands on thighs. And then go ahead and push down your hands down into your thighs. And what I'm really hoping that students get from this is that awareness of the grounding energy that's available. We can push down to help ourselves lift up. So for students now, most students aren't going to have two hands just resting on their thighs like Brian's are. So go ahead and pull your hands into the sides. And so I may give them a little bit of assistance. By the way, my shirt, The Future is Accessible. Okay. May give a little bit of assist here with maybe a forearm to thigh to really help to anchor down. I may give a little bit of pressure at hip points. Again, always asking consent, it's okay, right? Just sort of anchoring down into the hip points. And if you're doing this with your child, my suggestion is get your body nice and strong and ready as you're taking any of these movements, right? And then we might do, depending on what we're working on that day, if everybody's feeling a little bit low energy and we're looking to build the activation, we may wake up the legs. Right? And so waking up the legs could look like this, right? If I'm doing it to myself. And sometimes students will do some hand over hand with it. And sometimes it could be, you know, Brian or Rachel or I coming in and doing a little bit of assist with it. And this 9 times out of 10 gets the students laughing, right? Mm-hmm. Right, so just bring some energy through the legs. I'm really cognizant for someone who spends quite a bit of time seated, that to help the circulation in the legs and to build that energy of pushing down can really be very beneficial. We do come into some circling movements, ankles, hips, those types of things to start to facilitate some stretch as well. And then having created a little bit more structure in the lower body, we may work on a little bit of length through the upper body. And one of my favorite ways to do this is can you stand up for a second? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to turn Brian. Go ahead, turn this way. Thanks. So I will tend to slide my hand right down behind a student. If you could not push back quite so much, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. And there's this sweet spot that's right at the back of the heart. And if you can find that and give a little bit of push here, and then there's a little bit of opening in the chest that can happen, right? And so for someone who may have a harder time sitting unsupported, which is many of our students, having some structure and stability, so we may create a little bit of structure and stability in the legs first. We may create a little bit of lengthening awareness in the spine. And then this hand right behind the heart to start to encourage, maybe there's room to just sit up a little bit taller. This can be a great one to really facilitate some head control. I'm mindful of how long we hold this because it can be pretty fatiguing. So from here, I might just encourage students to just rest back in their chair a little bit, maybe take a pause, take a break. But also come into some relaxation of the shoulders, just asking them to just relax the shoulders down away from the ears and just giving a little bit of pressure on the shoulder area. It could also come in front of the student and same thing, just hands to the tops of the shoulders, little bit of opening in space here. And so one of our principles in yoga is to really find a long and tall spine, because spine health is everything, right? And so we want to find this length in the spine, creating a longer vertical plane. Then we find a little bit of that side to side motion as well. So after having anchored down some legs, and I would probably come back and do a little bit more anchoring in the legs, we may find a little bit of movement side to side, right? And so I could do a little bit of assist this way, and asking students, again, I'm doing lots of shortcuts here tonight, but for sure asking, is it okay for side laterals to come off, right? And the first thing I would probably do is just model it with my student, and just what's available for us to just sort of find this movement side to side. And what they really tend to love is sometimes just stretching arms out to the side and reaching for their friends. We'll often get much more stretch that way. And then twisting is another way. So we want to find length in the spine, we want to find opening side to side, and then this twisting action. And so twisting can be really subtle in our bodies. And it could be as simple as this, right? Just a very subtle moving forward of one shoulder and pulling the other shoulder back. It doesn't have to be super aggressive. The spine recognizes when that twisting is happening. Twisting is great for digestion. So for our kids who are dealing with any sort of digestion issues or constipation, twisting is great. And then of course with balance, I take it to the opposite side. Brian is instinctively bringing his other hand over. Sometimes we'll help students do that as well. It sort of depends on what's happening in their bodies. Right. And then come back to center. So here's the thing, we can also come in and do lots of the, help create a little bit, maybe we create a little bit more warmth in the body. And then maybe we take advantage of that and invite in a little bit more flexibility and opening in the body. So for sure, we might, come into some more leg stretches. And so maybe there's room to sort of open up the hamstring. I tend to use my body a lot as a prop, right? To make it a little bit easier. And, Sean, hamstrings were never a fondness for Sean, right? And for some of our students, definitely not. So we give it time, right? And so we may just sort of be here. And then again, that difference between I'm stretching you versus we're doing yoga together. So now if you notice, I'm actually modeling with Brian. I've got my leg in a bit of a hamstring stretch. He's got his leg in a hamstring stretch. And then we're just gonna be here. We're just gonna breathe together. Few deep breaths, right? And our students, while our students' breath patterns may not be as deep as mine, and it may be a little bit more shallow, they may breathe a little bit more all the way up in the chest as opposed to deeper into the lungs. In time, what we see in almost every class is their breath does deepen. The transformation that we see in students from the beginning of class to the end of class, seriously, in just half an hour, 35, 45 minutes is really quite remarkable. And so we would have given that some time, and then we take a pause. And then again, we come back to that, notice what you feel. And I would do some more grounding down here. What do you feel? Do you notice a different side to side? We can come into, some hip stretches, some opening of arms. Almost always provide some support underneath as we're finding any sort of opening. We use a lot of vocalizations, a lot of oming throughout class. Again, just anything to sort of help students move some energy through their bodies. Thank you. Forward. I just want to see if anything came in the chat for me. So that's sort of oh, good. Thanks, Janine. A little bit on what we do with students. So I want to kind of pause there before we dive into our practice together and see if you have any questions or anything. And for sure, I'm going to share my contact information, right? So that if you have additional things, we can come into it together. I can answer any questions as follow-up. Okay.
Also wanted to mention too, emphasize to try to breathe through your nose as much as possible. I know Sean had a tendency to breathe through his mouth a lot, and just encouraging them to breathe through your nose as much as possible really helps to calm and focus, and can just be something different for them to think about.
Yeah, cool. I also tend to really follow sort of the cycles and the seasons. So as we are right now, we are we're coming into November, which in Chinese medicine is the season of the lungs. And I feel like every season is the season of the lungs, right? So we do a lot of, we come into even more side body opening, and to really help our students gain access to every little breath space that's available to hear. Right now, we are doing all of our classes with students remaining in chairs. If you have opportunity to do anything at home with students, or with your children coming out of chairs, I'm going to show you as we go through our practice today. You can also be thinking about some of these things might be really great for your children as well. All right, cool. All right, we're going to move into some yoga for you all. All right, and this isn't going to be like a super aggressive yoga practice. We're going to take it. This is a little bit more yoga for caregivers. Yeah, thank you. Brian's going to check out.
See you, everybody. Great seeing everybody.
This is going to be more yoga for caregivers. If you have, I'm trusting that you're all joining from home. So if you have a blanket, I'm going to give you like just a couple minutes. Grab a blanket. If you have a belt or a strap or a small towel, anything like that, go ahead and grab that as well. All right. To come back. Cool. See, I could have sent that in advance, but then it just would have been something else on your to-do list, and I definitely don't want that. So I have a yoga mat. You certainly don't need one. You're welcome to stay seated in a chair, or just bring yourself down to the earth. Bring yourself down to the earth. And this is going to be a really grounded practice, which is another reason why we come down to the earth. We're going to start in a position on our backs. If you're not coming down all the way down to the earth, just sit in your chair, and I'll give you everything that I cue. I'll cue for a chair as well. But if it's available to you, come down to your back. Let the knees face up to the sky and the thighs fall in on one another. And just take your arms to a T. If you're sitting in your chair, just find a comfortable seat here. So don't worry about sitting too tall. Just let yourself sit in a position that you're not slumped, but there's some softness in your body. And so here, allowing yourself to pause. The eyes could soften or close. And I want to share with you as you just let yourself land here. I spoke about the spine and spine health. There's one of Brene Brown's books that I really find a lot of wisdom is called Braving the Wilderness. And she talks about having a strong back, soft front, and wild heart. Strong back, soft front, and wild heart. And here's what she says. She quotes here Rashi Joan Halifax. All too often, our so-called strength comes from fear, not love. Instead of having a strong back, many of us have a defended front shielding a weak spine. In other words, we walk around brittle and defensive, trying to conceal our lack of confidence.
If we strengthen our backs, metaphorically speaking, and develop a spine that's flexible but sturdy, then we can risk having a front that's soft and open. How can we give and accept care with strong backs, soft front compassion, moving past fear into a place of genuine tenderness? I believe it comes about when we can be truly transparent, seeing the world clearly and letting the world see into us. And this practice of yoga is very much aligned with that. It's about allowing ourselves to be seen as we are without any pretense. And this practice of yoga literally asks us to just show up as we are and know that that is perfect. And so as we move through just some simple postures tonight and some breath work, could you just let yourself relax into the knowledge that you've already done enough simply by being here? As we did before, we opened our practice with an Om. I'm going to invite you to do that again if you wish. You can even lay your hands over top of your heart to invite that intention in. And we'll find an Om together. Take a breath in to prepare. Om. And then if your hands have come over your heart, just release them down by your sides. Let the eyes just gently open. And then if you're on your back, let your feet line up so that they're stacked underneath your knees. They're about hip width apart. If you're seated, it's going to be the same thing. Have your knees in front of your hips and your feet down on the floor. And we're going to find some compassion for the low back here. Draw your right knee up towards your chest. You could grab behind your thigh or on top of your shin, either way, and just draw that thigh in towards your chest. If you're seated, you'll step down through your left foot to make this happen. If you're on your back, your left foot is still on the earth, but you probably have a little bit more stability in your back. And just hold this. Right, this right here, just stretching out the low back, which can get super aggravated. And then maybe you start to circle the ankle around a few times. And then circle it back the opposite way. Good, and then take that right leg and just send it long. You could interlace hands behind your thigh. Straighten the leg just as much as it feels okay in your low back and your hip. And pull your toes back towards your face. If you're seated in your chair, hands on the edge of your seat might give you more stability. And take one more breath here. And then set that foot back down in its starting position. And again, you just pause and notice what you feel. Gather your left leg in. Again, either interlacing behind the thigh or over top of the shin, draw it in close towards the body. If you're seated, it might be a little bit easier to have the hands interlaced behind the thigh. And just notice how this feels on this side. Start to circle the ankle around a few times. Back the opposite direction. And then send that leg long. So now your left leg goes long. The toes pull back towards your hip. And if you're seated in the chair, you're probably exerting a little bit more effort sending that leg out long. So you'll just do your best. And then set 2 feet down on the earth. Good. This time, we're going to find a version of bringing the thighs and the chest closer together. So if you're on your back, you'll draw both knees in towards your chest If you're seated in your chair, start to forward fold your torso over your legs. So we're all finding this way of compressing the chest and the thighs together. If you're on the earth, make some little circles with your knees. This will massage out the very base of your spine, which is super great for releasing some stress in the nervous system. Circle the opposite way. And then we're all going to meet in a seated position. So if you're on the earth, just roll over to one side and push yourself up. Good. If you're seated in your chair, just let yourself sit a little bit taller and let yourself sit in whatever way is most comfortable for you. So some people are really comfortable in a cross-legged position. If that's not your experience, maybe one leg extended out is more comfortable. I asked you to grab a blanket. Sometimes sitting up on a blanket or a pillow can be helpful. It just elevates the hips a little bit to make it a little bit easier to sit tall. So we talk about this strong back, soft front. And again, this spine health. We're going to move the spine a couple of different ways here this evening. So whatever seated position is, let yourself sit tall and see if the crown of your head could just lift up a little bit taller. And start just releasing some tension in the neck. So draw your right ear over to your right shoulder. And as the right ear goes over to the right shoulder, let your left fingers maybe just walk away from you a little bit away from the body. You are welcome to let the gaze soften. You're welcome to let the eyes close. And then maybe you just make some small movements here, gently lifting the chin slightly and then drawing it back down. Some subtle movements here, just noticing if you're holding any tension in the neck. If the left hand has walked away from the body, bring it back in. And slow motion, just draw your head back up to center. And just pause, right? Notice what you feel. Sometimes the neck stretch can be quite intense. Draw the left ear over to the left shoulder. Still sitting tall in the spine. And then maybe the right hand starts to walk away from the body ever so slightly. And as you are here, just notice if you're able to just breathe easily, or as you move tension through your body. So if you have tension in your neck and it starts to release here, does the breath get a little bit more labored in any way? Are you a little bit shorter with your breath? Try to stretch it out. And then on this side, maybe you lower the chin a little bit or raise it. Nice and easy here. Good. And then bring your hand back to center, bring your head back to center and just pause. Let your arms fall away from you so that the palms face up to the sky. And we'll take a few big breaths here. So as you inhale, sweep your arms wide to the side and all the way up overhead. And trace them down to the heart. We'll move with that a few times. Arms sweep wide to the side, all the way up overhead. And down to the heart. Last one, wide all the way up overhead. Down to the heart. This is going to come into a forward fold. So bring your hands in front of you and you'll just start walking yourself forward. You could come onto your forearms if that's available to you, or send your arms even longer. Be a little less concerned about how close your chest comes down to the earth, and a little bit more aware of how much are you still rooting down in your seat. Could you find some stretch in the small of your back? If you're seated in a chair, you're taking another forward fold, drawing your chest over your thighs. And then just give the shoulders a little bit of movement side to side here. letting the torso just sway ever so slightly to find some space in the low back. Pause in the middle and start walking your hands back in. Bring your shoulders back up over your hips. And just pause. Notice what you feel. We're going to switch the cross of the legs. So if you're in that cross-legged position, switch the cross. You can bring your hands down for support. If you're sitting with one leg extended out, just switch it up. And then again, arms just come softly by the sides, palms face up. Inhale to sweep arms all the way up overhead. And trace it to the heart. 2 more times, wide all the way up. The gaze could even lift. And down to the heart. Last one. Good. This time, interlace your hands. Push your palms away from you and then dome into your back. So your chin comes down towards your chest and the belly starts to draw in a little bit closer to the spine so that you really dome out through the back. And the back is making this arc shape, a little bit of a C curve here. And then inhale, sit up tall, reach the arms up overhead. Sweep them down by your sides. And then 2 options here. You'll either bring your hands onto your hips, or if it's available to you to interlace hands behind your back, you'll do that. Now sit up tall here. A lot of times when we bring our hands behind our back, we sit forward, sit up tall, broaden across the chest. Let the shoulder blades on the back pull together slightly. The elbows are going to squeeze together back behind you. It's a big opening in the chest. One more breath in. And a breath out. Lovely. Release from that and just give the arms a little bit of a shake. Let your right hand come down to the side. Left arm will come along the seam of your shirt and then all the way up overhead. So here's this side body stretch. You can start to soften into that right arm to really close the gap from your right hip bone to your right rib cage. And if the arm reaching up overhead feels like it starts to fatigue, you can just bring your hand behind your head. For some people, this feels really great. You could even lay your head back into your hand. And now you too are getting the benefit of all that opening into the lungs, right? Bringing a lot of air into that space. And then upright the spine. Let both arms just rest by your sides for a moment. Shrug your shoulders up to your ears and release them down your back. We'll do that 2 more times. Shrug up and down. Last one. And then your left arm starts to walk away from the body. Right arm starts to reach up overhead. And then as you're here, right? So it's okay to let postures build. We don't have to go all the way to the depth of the posture the very first breath that we're in it. We can let it develop. Again, maybe that top arm, the hand comes behind the head as the elbow goes up to the sky. Lay your head back into your hand. If there's room to go deeper, you can always bend a little bit more into that left elbow. Fluid spine here, really flexible spine, side to side. And then bring yourself back up. Good. Let's sweep arms all the way up overhead. And take a twist to the right. As you twist to the right, your shoulders rotate and your hands can just lightly touch down. If you're on the earth, the hands could just set one at the middle part of your body, one at the back. If you're seated in a chair, or if you're on the earth, you could also take your, left hand across your right thigh. And let that just help you to find a little bit more of a twist. And so we're always really mindful with twists. We're not pulling or yanking. We're letting the twist evolve and grow. Your head is usually the thing that has the most flexibility, your cervical spine. So let that sort of grow at the end part of your twist. And then bring yourself back to center. One more time, we'll just switch the cross of your legs or whichever leg position you're in. And then we'll take that twist to the opposite side. So arms sweep up overhead and twist to the left. Again, this practice really focused on the spine health. We talk about the spine being so important in yoga because there is the energy centers that run through our body. There are different ways of looking at this, but primarily the energy centers are aligned with our spine. And so the more energy that we can clear through these energy centers, things that get stuck in there that create dis-ease or disease, the better we are. And bring yourself back through center. And just pause. All right, options, always options. I'm gonna grab a strap. If you have a belt, you'll grab that. If you have a small towel, you can use that. If not, you're just gonna use your arms. And you could take this next sequence, you could stay seated. If you wanted to come up to a standing position, you could come to a stand as well. So whatever is best for you. I'm going to stay in my seated posture, just to keep particularly this time of night, sometimes it's nice to keep the energy a little bit lower, but if you prefer to come to a stand, by all means do it. And then take your strap or belt, take it fairly wide. Again, if you're working without it, just let your arms be taut. And then reach the strap up overhead. You can take a little side to side action here. Yeah, so you can use anything here. Like a lot of times little tea towels work pretty well. And so you're taking the stretch that you just found, but just with a little bit of movement with it. And then start to allow this to come into a twist a little bit. So you migrate the shoulders over towards one direction, doesn't matter which way, we always do both. Keep the movement that you're doing. And then you'll find bringing it back through center. As you're doing this, notice if you find that you may be bringing some tension into your jaw. And start coming back the opposite direction, twisting the other way. And then making our way back to center once more. Good. Release your hands down, just bring the strap with you. And just notice for a moment what you feel. Like in my body, I feel lots of tingles going down my arms and I can feel some warmth there. Right, and so that's that moving, whatever you wish to call it, the prana, the chi, the energy, the life force, moving it through your body. And we're going to use this to come into the back of the body, reach the strap up overhead, and then let it come about halfway down on the back. This will have your shoulder blades pull together on your back, and you'll do your best to sit tall. That's a big opening through the chest here. Maybe even lift the chest or lift the chin and breathe into this space. If it aggravates the low back, soften the elbows or just drop the strap. Take 2 more breaths right here. And then your hands will come behind you. Just let them rest down. So the strap is still behind you. Again, notice whatever sensation you feel there. And then start to walk your hands a little bit closer. If you're working with that strap, that you just sort of roll the strap in your hands. And so now you may have it so that your hands are coming a little bit closer together. So if you're someone that couldn't quite get your hands to connect earlier, maybe there's room for it here. And then you can stay your seat exactly as you are. Just start to lift your strap or your hands away from your seat. It's another stretch into the shoulder, into the chest area. Take a few breaths here. And then release that down. Good. Take the strap or whatever you have and just place it off to the side. And come back down onto your back. Bring your blanket with you if you have a blanket. Let's start with the knees facing up to the sky once more. And bring your hands to your belly. And just focusing here for a moment, let the hands just rest wherever they are called to be on the belly. Could you just let the belly feel like a balloon with your breath? And then as you exhale, the belly deflates. The hands start to come back down. Just a few measured rounds of breath right here. And then release your arms by your sides. We'll find a little bit of hip opening. Cross your right ankle over your left knee. If you're seated in a chair and bringing the ankle up over the knee is a little too aggressive, cross at the ankles instead. And then from here, you'll just very gently invite that right knee away from the body. And so the hips are where we store a lot of tension. And so if we can allow ourselves to just use the yoga practice to just bring some awareness of what's happening in the hips and direct some breath there, could we use it to clear some of the stuck energy that's here? Your hands can stay wherever they are, including one hand, the right hand on the thigh, or just bring your arms out to a T or goalpost, whatever you have the most space for. That might help you to just continue to stretch the spine long and find some expansion in the chest. And then we'll switch sides here. So set that right foot on the earth. Pause, level out the hips. And then the left foot crosses over. Again, invitation for the left hand to come to the thigh and gently push it away. Pausing here to breathe. Staying exactly as you are, or just allowing the arms to drift out to the sides. And then set 2 feet down on the earth again. We're going to find a twist. And my suggestion is if you have a blanket, bring it between your thighs, whether you have a blanket or a pillow. And then shift your hips slightly to the left and drop your knees to the right. And the blanket or pillow between the thighs just gives you a little bit more space in your low back. Another option, if it's not comfortable having the pillow between the thighs, you could always bring it underneath your bottom thigh if your thighs don't come all the way down to the earth. And so here we are in the twist, right? As we talked about before, twists just help to improve your digestion, your detoxification qualities here. And this practice of yoga allows us to just release all that doesn't serve us so that we can step into that what does. Bring yourself back up through center and take your twist to the opposite side. Again, blanket or pillow could be between the thighs or underneath your bottom thigh, either way. If the arms are stretched to the sides, let the palms face up to just promote a little bit more of that opening through the chest. And then bringing yourself through center, we're going to set up our final posture, which is Shavasana. And for this, you may want to take the whole blanket, open it up, lay it over your body, and just come right back down. The legs extend long away from the body. The arms rest long away from the body. And as you are here, could you soften? In this final posture, letting yourself rest. And then, depending on what your time is like, what you're moving into in the evening ahead, if you have time to rest here for a little bit more and that's of service to you, you're welcome to just stay exactly as you are. If you're going to close your practice with me, roll over onto your right hand side. It's your more calming side. Give yourself a little hug here. Thanking you for taking some time for yourself to be able to drop in with your community here, to nourish your body, your mind, your spirit. And then bring yourself back up to a seated posture. And you're welcome to gather your hands at your heart. They can come into prayer position or just simply stack your hands over your heart. And I'll share with you this last passage from Strong Back, Soft Front, Wild Heart. A wild heart is awake to the pain in the world, but does not diminish its own pain. A wild heart can beat with gratitude and lean into pure joy without denying the struggle in the world. It's not always easy or comfortable. Sometimes we struggle with the weight of the pull, but what makes it possible is a front made of love and a back built of courage. I can think of no better quote to honor this community. If you wish, you can join me in a closing Om. Take a breath in to prepare. Om. Namaste. Thank you all so very much for joining. I'm so happy to have been with you tonight, and I will always be here to answer any questions you have. Thank you, Teresa, for reaching out and asking me to do this, and Julie for hosting.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Kerri, if you would like, we can